After World War I, the money trusts continued to consolidate their power, specifically to strengthen and institutionalize their influence over government. They did this by forming the Council on Foreign Relations in 1921. The council brought together the nation's top leaders in the fields of business, law, medicine, media, and politics. Currently, there are around 4,000 members. It was originally dominated by Morgan interests, with the Rockefellers gradually assuming more of a leadership role over the years. Its first chairman was, if you can believe it, Elihu Root. The Council on Foreign Relations is essentially a lobbying body, but one which wields vast influence. The majority of U.S. presidents since Franklin Roosevelt have been CFR members, as has nearly every U.S. Secretary of Defense and State since World War II. Most congressional leaders are council members, and important cabinet positions are also generally filled from the ranks of the council.
It's good to be back at the Council on Foreign Relations. As Pete mentioned, I've been a member for a long time and was actually a director for some period of time. I never mentioned that when I was campaigning for re-election back home in Wyoming.
The late Aaron Russo, an Oscar-nominated film producer who received but declined an invitation from Nicholas Rockefeller to join the Council on Foreign Relations, spoke about the organization.
I had a friend, Nick Rockefeller, who was one of the Rockefeller family, and he, when I was running for governor in Nevada, he came to me, introduced himself to me through an attorney, and we became friends. We started talking about things, and I learned an awful lot from Mr. Rockefeller. Now, I was definitely being recruited, but it's more subtle than that.
Well, in your words, just go through the process, and then what he said.
Well, what it is remember, we were friends, and we used to go to my house a lot. We'd have dinner, we'd talk, and he'd tell me about business investments that he'd get involved in, and was I interested in joining the Council on Foreign Relations? I would have to get a letter to join them, but was I interested in that? And just stuff, leading you on. And I used to say to him that I never really did that because that wasn't where I was coming from. As much as I like you, Nick, your ways and my ways, we're on the opposite side of the fence. I don't believe in enslaving people, and
he would come back with, "Oh, I do." Or?
Well, it's more like, how do I put it? It was like, what do you care about them? What do you care about those people? What difference does it make to you? They're just serfs. They're just people. It was just a lack of caring, and that's just not who I was. It was just sort of like cold, it was just like cold. And we believe that it's best for society to be ruled by an elite people who control everything. And I said, I don't believe that. I believe God put me on this earth to be the best person I could be, and put everybody on this earth to be the best they can be, not to be a slave and a sheep to you and these people. And I don't understand why you want to control everything. What is the need for that, And I asked them, do all the people in the Council of Foreign Relations feel the same way you feel? He said, no, a lot of them think they're doing the right thing. They think that socialism is the best way to go. But the people at the top, they all know the truth of what's happening. And that's what it is.
So it's compartmentalized within the elite structure as well.
Of course it is. Of course it is. I mean, all the people that are in the CFR, was that 2,000-3,000 people? I have to go to like Dan Rather. They don't know what's going on. They join the CFR because it's prestigious. They think it's good for business. It's good for this. They don't know what's really happening.
One of the CFR's most world-changing accomplishments was their creation of the Central Intelligence Agency. The CIA was formed after World War II as part of the Defense Act of 1947, a bill which also combined the departments of the Army, Navy, and Air Force under a new Department of Defense and created the National Security Council as well. This Defense Act was formulated by 3 longtime members of the CFR who also lobbied Congress for its passage. The first of these 3 men was James Forrestal, who served as the country's first Secretary of Defense. Harry Truman, who had succeeded FDR upon his death, was up for re-election at the time, and his opponent, CFR member Thomas Dewey, had been selected by the council to succeed Truman. James Forrestal met with Dewey, and they had agreed that Forrestal would stay on as Defense Secretary after Dewey's election to the presidency. But to everyone's surprise, Dewey did not win. Truman did. This was maybe the only time since World War II that the Council on Foreign Relations did not control the outcome of a presidential election. They made sure it wouldn't happen again, however, for after Dewey's defeat, the Council has made sure that the presidential candidates from both parties were in their corner. Truman had ties to the mob, but was not a member of the Council. He soon fired James Forrestal. Forrestal was later admitted to Bethesda Hospital for psychiatric treatment, and soon after fell out of a 16-story window. The circumstances surrounding his so-called suicide are suspicious. Why he may have been killed is unknown. Before introducing the second of these three men, it will behoove us to first fill in some gaps regarding the militarization of Japan and the rise of communism. After financing the Rockefeller and Harriman empires, Jacob Schiff turned his attention to Japan and Russia. Russia had long been a thorn in the side of the international bankers. Tsar Alexander II had sided with Lincoln during the Civil War against them, and the czars had long refused to allow Western banking to take root in their country. So the bankers began formulating a plan to end czarist rule in Russia. The right-hand man of Jacob Schiff in this endeavor was an explorer and expert on Russian and Japanese affairs, a man by the name of George Kennan. In the 1880s, Kennan traveled to Siberia, which served as a sort of penal colony for political dissidents in Russia, and began writing articles for the Western press and giving lectures across the U.S. describing the deplorable conditions in the Tsar's labor camps. Influential Americans like Mark Twain reacted with horror and became ardent supporters of political change in Russia. Meanwhile, Jacob Schiff began funding Jewish revolutionaries led by Leon Trotsky, pursuant to orchestrating a coup d'etat in Russia. Schiff's grandson related later that the old man sank about $20 million for the final triumph of Bolshevism in Russia. Paul Warburg's younger brother Max, who ran the family bank headquarters in Hamburg, also helped fund Lenin and Trotsky. But before a coup in Russia would be attempted, the bankers saw another opportunity to weaken the Tsar, which involved Japan. There's just no way around it. In order to understand anything about Japan, you have to know what happened there in 1600. In that year, after centuries of fighting between dominant clans, a large battle took place at Sekigahara, in which over 150,000 samurai fought. During the fighting, several clans switched sides, and Tokugawa Ieyasu and his supporters won a decisive victory. Ieyasu subsequently moved his clan to Edo and united Japan under what is known as the Tokugawa shogunate, Tokugawa being the clan name, and shogunate meaning simply military rule. The emperor at this time became a figurehead. Three participants on the losing side at Sekigahara, the Mori, Shimazu, and Chosokabe clans, were ill-treated by Ieyasu and became bitter enemies of the Tokugawa. They would exact their revenge on the clan centuries later. Under the Tokugawa, Japan became a closed country. With the exception of the Dutch, who were given exclusive rights to trade with Japan through the port of Nagasaki, the country would remain off-limits to foreigners for the next 2.5 centuries. The Tokugawa clan maintained relative peace in Japan until 1853, when the American Admiral Perry showed up on its shores with a fleet of 4 black-hulled warships and demanded Japan open its borders to foreign trade, or else. Japan went into a panic. Fearful of an attack by these strange people with their modern weapons, the Tokugawa decided to appease Perry. This set off civil war in the country, for the Western clans saw this as a chance to topple the shogunate. They rallied their supporters under the cry, "Expel the barbarians, reinstate the emperor." Ironically, during the subsequent bloody conflict over what to do about the foreigners, both sides employed the support of the West, hoping to get the upper hand. France supported and sold weaponry to the shogunate, while Britain supported and sold weapons to the Western clans. After much bloodletting, the Tokugawa shogunate threw in the towel, and Emperor Meiji, a 16-year-old boy at the time, moved the imperial house to Edo and assumed power. Edo was renamed Tokyo. The newly restored emperor did not kick out the foreigners as his supporters had advertised. On the contrary, the Meiji government went on a modernization binge, building railways, factories, power plants, and warships as fast as they could. Military advisors were brought to Japan from Britain, France, and even Germany. Then Japan started flexing its new military might in Asia, fighting and winning a war with China. This made Russia nervous, and tensions were raised again when Japan signed a military alliance with Britain. Finally, in 1904, Japan attacked and declared war on Russia. Jacob Schiff immediately went into action, arranging loans to support Japan's war effort. Money poured in from Kuhn & Loeb, M.M. Warburg, Deutsche Bank, and the Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank, which had been set up by the British after the Opium Wars. Not only did Schiff make sure Japan got all the money it needed, he used his influence to see that Russia got none. Japan's decisive victory over Russia surprised the world.